Welcome to Becoming and Belonging, a journey of identity and culture. I'm your host, Amy Huggins from Ascension Wellness. Each week, we embark on a journey of discovering who we truly are, navigating the nuance of identity and culture, and learning what it means to belong in our own skin and in the world. Our identity can be shaped by how we choose to respond to life's challenges. Everything from moving, starting a new career, becoming a parent, and so much more can be overwhelming. These pivot points, though, also offer immense growth potential. Joining me is Rosemary Dede, a holistic business coach and community builder with over a decade of entrepreneurial experience. She co-founded a successful fashion brand in Berlin and later created She Tribe, a vibrant community supporting Black women in navigating entrepreneurial and personal growth. Her journey moving from Belgium to Ghana, running a business while raising 3 children, and coaching women to align their businesses with their lives has shaped her understanding of identity, purpose, and balance. As a homeschooling mother and as a coach, Rosemary offers a unique experience and perspective on the evolving relationship between identity, culture, and community, making her insights valuable for those seeking personal growth and belonging. Rosemary, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Amy.
It's so wonderful to have you here, and I'm excited to just jump right into this conversation and really learn more about your experience with life changes and the impacts that's had on informing your identity.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited about our conversation today. Well, I feel like my life is always, I guess everybody's life is into chapters, but when I look back, there's so many life transitions that I've gone through already at only 38 that sometimes I feel like I'm 60 already.
I know
Yeah.
that feeling. I feel like I'm probably on my 4th life at this point. And if a cat has 9 lives, how many do humans get?
Exactly.
So tell us a little bit about that journey. What have those different chapters been like for you?
I think one of the most pivotal chapters for me was definitely moving to Ghana. So I was born in Germany, raised in Belgium, with Ghanaian roots. And in 2012, I got an opportunity to travel abroad, to travel to Ghana. I think I probably just created that opportunity for myself because it wasn't like out of the blue, I got a call to move to Ghana, but I just had this travel bug. And although I was at a time in my life where I had a stable job, I had friends, life was great. And most people would be thinking, why would you shake things up when everything is going so well for you? But I was yearning for more.
Mhm.
And I grew tired of the life that I had at the moment. I wanted more. And so I started looking online for job opportunities and speaking with my brother who had recently made the move from the US to Ghana for work. Mentioned that if I was so interested to move to Ghana, why not come to Ghana for at least a year to try it out and see and help him out in another business he had created. And so that's how I manifested my opportunity to move to Ghana. And that move was really pivotal in the life that I'm living now, but also really transformed me. And for me, it was because as an adult, I was in my late 20s then. No, well, somewhere mid to late 20s. And most of the time people just are born somewhere, they go to school, they meet, make friends, and they are kind of in the same environment all the time. Very few of us get the opportunity to just be outside of our comfort zone, of outside of our community, and meet new people as adults and forced to kind of rediscover yourself. We just do things out of habit most time. We just hang out with the same people, do what is kind of expected of us. And now I had gotten this gift to rediscover myself and redefine who I wanted to be. I didn't know it at that time, but that was the gift I had received. But my move to Ghana was really that, being an adult woman in a country that seemingly was home, but not home at the same time. So I was a stranger in a place that I looked like I belonged somehow. Um, and I also realized that living in a place where I was part of the visible majority changed something in me, not knowing that that would happen, and just the experience of being there and navigating womanhood, just being alone, being an adult, making new friends, and my hobbies really allowed me to dig deep into myself and to define who I wanted to be going forth.
Yeah. Wow, that's really interesting. And the first thing that stands out to me is I always see relationship as a mirror.
Mm,
And we all have relationships, obviously, with other humans, with non-humans, with the natural world in various ways, including, specific plants. But also, I talk a lot about our relationship with our business when I'm working with entrepreneurs. And our, but all of these relationships are like mirrors that reflect ourselves, aspects of ourselves back to us.
mm,
And of course, we don't tend to go around recognizing that it's a mirror that we're looking at. We think that, well, somebody did something or said something that either I liked, and so therefore I like them, or I didn't like, and so maybe I don't like them at all or at this
mm.
moment, right? And we have this tendency to hold them accountable. And I'm not saying we shouldn't, but sometimes what we are holding others accountable for might be our own internal reflections that we're not recognizing. So it's really fascinating to hear your take on going to Ghana to try it on for size for that year with your brother, because it's home but not home. It's this place where you look like where you look like you belong. And that was such a poignant phrase.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because I think having grown up in a place where I was part of the visible minority, I didn't know how else to live. It was normal for me. I also didn't know otherwise. And I didn't feel unhappy or weird about it, but just being in a place where all of a sudden I wasn't, and I was part of a visible majority meant that I almost became an individual again,
Mhm.
and also almost invisible in
Mm,
the sense that I could just be,
yeah.
and but also everything around me looked, every people, like every person out there looked like me in a way. The advertisement also just reflected back to me. It was really weird, and um, it was a good feeling, but also I realized at that moment, wow, so my whole life I didn't see this, and I wasn't even aware that it had an impact on me, and now it has, and it was really a beautiful moment. What I thought was going to be a year turned out to be 3.5 years
Mm.
eventually, like all things go, right?
Um, yeah, that's amazing. I had an interesting conversation with someone recently who grew up in a place where she was the visible majority, and she moved to a location where she was the visible minority. And she felt more safe there being the visible minority, she said, because she was not expected to fit in with social norms because she
Mm,
was visibly,
other.
yes, other, yeah. It was a place of safety for her, which is kind of the
Yeah.
opposite. Being an American, that's the opposite of what I tend to be aware of. Uh,
Hmm.
but what was it like for you just stepping into, I wonder if there was a sense of freedom or being able to
There
fly under
was.
the radar, being that visible majority.
Yeah. Also healing
Mm,
from something I didn't know I needed to heal from, and definitely a sense of freedom. And funny enough, in a way, also not being, because I looked like I belonged.
mhm,
However, when people interacted with me, they noticed quite quickly that I wasn't. And I, I, I don't know if it bothered me. Maybe in the beginning, it might have bothered me that people thought, "Oh, well, you're not really from here, are you?"
mm,
Or, or maybe they said you're like a modern version, you're 2.0 version of what people expect a Ghanaian woman to be like.
mm,
But very quickly, it gave me the opportunity to redefine what it meant to be a Black woman or a Ghanaian woman or whatever.
mhm,
And I was like, wow, this is the first time I'm getting an opportunity to redefine that for myself.
yeah.
And so, whilst being there, I started to take on hobbies and activities and mingle with people that I chose to mingle with, regardless of what people would think. That, you know what I mean? Like, you're supposed to hang out with these type of people. You're supposed to like this kind of activities. It gave me the freedom to try out new things and to mingle in different communities. And Accra, which is the capital of Ghana, is a very vibrant cosmopolitan city. So there were a lot of people from all of, from different parts of the world, large Italian communities, French communities, German communities, and being a polyglot, that was amazing for me because not only could I, as I'm rediscovering myself, I could really choose to be in different communities because I understood their language as well.
Wow, that just sounds like you just got to go try on
Yeah.
different aspects of all these different identities. It almost sounds like an identity playground.
Mm-hmm. It definitely was.
What are some things you learned about yourself?
One of the major things I learned about myself is that I get to this and so and that you can also start over. You can redefine yourself at any time in life.
Mm,
It's not something you do in your late, in your 20s, on your 30s. You get to choose
mhm,
and you don't have to fit the mold. And I think that's really the place where I embraced who I was, and also embrace the unknown parts of myself and started to play and say, oh, maybe I should try this out and maybe I like it or maybe I don't.
mm,
And also know that it meant that I'm not married to anything or anyone as well. I could just try something out and see if it's nice. And if it's not, then I could just move on and try something else. Whereas I think being back in Belgium, even in entrepreneurship, what I saw in Ghana is that out of necessity, maybe people had multiple gigs. They had their 9 to 5, but also needed to have a side hustle just because they needed to. But also the mentality there was that people were less anxious about trying something new. It
mm,
didn't mean that you had to marry the idea. They were open to trying things out. And if it didn't work, there was no shame about it
mm.
as much as I felt like there was shame back in Belgium because entrepreneurship is not something that, at least when I was growing up here, going to school, most people just went to school to go work in corporate. Nobody was starting a business. I started a business as a student, starting my own fashion label, but that was like, whoa, it was not normal
Mm.
in those days. And so there's a lot of shame, or there was a lot of shame around starting something and not succeeding. And therefore, and I'm doing air quotes, you can't see it, but because you feel like you're a failure and it's like, oh, I have to now go back to work. There's this shame about it that wasn't in Ghana. And so most people just had different side hustles and tried things. And I think that's where I also felt more comfortable with the idea of trying new things, also in business.
That's really interesting. So that really makes me wonder about the histories of Ghana and Belgium and maybe that's too big of a topic for this conversation. I'm just curious as to the cultural roots of that, why the Belgians might not be as comfortable with trying new things, but the Ghanans are. I don't know,
Yeah.
something you would be able to speak to.
I think one of the basic things is that in Ghana, out of necessity, people just have to have multiple streams of income
Absolutely.
because it is a developing country. And so your 9 to 5 might just not be enough to pay for everything. Whereas in Belgium, your 9 to 5, working 8 hours is very sufficient. Most people have a very good life just working 8 hours. Whereas, for instance, if you look in the UK, which is not far from here, most people work more than 8 hours a day because maybe their main job just doesn't make them enough money. And so the lifestyle in Belgium and the system has made it in such a way that it's very comfortable to um, just work a 9 to 5 and go on holiday twice a year, and buy a house. And just, if you're comfortable with I'm not going to say the basic, but really what the norm is, and you don't necessarily want to start a business, you don't have to. And to make the system work, I would say people have to kind of work so they can pay taxes. So that works really well for the Belgian system. If there are too many entrepreneurs, I don't know how that would work. I mean, obviously, entrepreneurs pay taxes as well, but you know what I mean. It's just also in the mindset, and I think in the culture here, people are just more reserved and more comfortable with stability. They need and want stability. Whereas in a country that is a developing nation, they are probably more used to instability, not necessarily safety, but just like economic instability, because their livelihood, depends on so many other factors internationally, the dollar rate, the euro, gold, blah, blah, blah. Whereas here, I think in Belgium, there's just more stability. And so you're not going to, if you lose your job tomorrow, the government will take care of you. If you lose your job tomorrow in Ghana, that's not so sure.
That makes a lot of sense. And, the systems in which any of us live in function, I don't know, I think of like a solar system. And
Mm,
so the way things function, there's a balance, right? And so when one aspect of it starts going a different way, it can throw off and threaten the security of the entire system because when
right.
it's out of balance.
Mm-hmm.
And in Ghana, they don't have that type of balance, but I'm wondering if they have balance in other ways.
Oh, for sure, for sure. And I think the one of those reasons which I said is necessity, and people just have to work multiple jobs to make and
Mhm.
to have enough. But also it means that women, there's a lot of female entrepreneurs there and who are very fulfilled and get to live a lifestyle that they want, but also a lot of there's a easy way to build community there, and you can get support easily even as a working mom. You don't struggle as much with kids, just like the way you would in the West, where you're working X number of hours a week, you need to pay for a very expensive nanny or daycare. Whereas in back in Ghana, you can easily get supports from neighbors, family, friends, or cheaper labor, but that is enough for the person. That is enough for that person to also build and then live on. So you could just do a lot more. Yeah.
That's incredible. And there sounds, I can only imagine that there's a depth and a richness and a sense of safety in having a community
Mhm.
structure like that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You're really your brother's keeper, and
Yeah.
everybody's kind of looking out for everybody. And people still say hello in the streets. Good morning. Neighbors actually know each other, not like here
Mhm.
when you say a few words to each other, if you're lucky.
Yeah, gosh, in the States too. Oh my goodness. I've lived in the neighborhood, in the house I live in now for just over a year. And we went through a major storm that devastated much of the area just a couple of months ago. And when we were without power and water, we had no services. Everybody was outside because there were no screens to distract us. We
Mm.
had no computers or TVs or even phones. We didn't even have cell service for a while. And I met neighbors I have not met in the year I have lived here.
Wow, yeah, yeah. And that's normal here in the West. It's just everybody's busy and yeah. Whereas in Ghana, yeah, it's just the safety. I have this story that I always tell friends. So there's this when I used to work in Ghana, sometimes in certain places people sell all some kind of things along the roadsides. They're called hawkers, street sellers. And one guy was selling books, and I love books. And so on my drive in traffic every day to work, I would see the same guy. It would come to my window and try and sell me great, personal growth books, all kind of books. And I was like, oh, that's really amazing because it's a great way to spend time in traffic to shop for some, for books. And one day he was telling me about this book and the traffic light went green. So I really had to go. And I said, I'm so sorry, I have to go. And he said, you know what, take the bag. And he gave me his entire bag full of books. mind you, this guy, I don't know how many books he sells a day, but I'm sure he doesn't own the books. If I steal the books, he won't be able to, he'll probably have to pay his boss or whatever. But the thing is, he trusted me. I don't know this person. I only see them every day driving to work. But he trusted me with the books and he said, "You take it to work on your way back tomorrow. When you're going back to work, you just give me what you bought, the money for what you bought, and give me back the bag." And I was so shocked. I was like, "Oh my God, he's trusting me with this book." I went to work that day and I literally forced all my colleagues to buy all the books.
That's great. Oh, I love that story so much.
And I said, "Do you need a book? Do you need a book?" Because this guy trusted me and I felt so touched. I wanted to do something for him.
Yeah.
And so I sold all the books. And the next day I just gave him an envelope of money and he was so grateful. But that's something that would never happen here. That's just crazy.
Yes, yes, exactly. And there's such a beauty and I don't know, maybe a sacredness to
Mm,
that sort of safety and that sort of community
yeah,
and really seeing people for who they are versus our own fears that we have a tendency to
exactly.
get.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So that's something that I always keep in my memory bank. Every time I had a bad day, I'll say, Not all people are bad and not all people fear others. There's this guy who did that."
Right. And clearly changed your life. And
Yeah.
so, okay, that makes me really curious. So you have ancestral roots, you have family roots in Ghana,
Mhm.
but also I'm really wondering if your soul just felt called, like you're an entrepreneur, so you were already doing things differently. And there's a bravery that comes with that. There's almost um a sense of rebelliousness that comes with that. Like, here's the system. And we all know how the system works and what we're supposed to do when. And, we can
Mhm.
go check the boxes and we can play it safe and stay in the system and be good boys and girls, right?
Right.
There was something in you that said, I just don't want to fit in that system. That I'm bigger than that, maybe, or different than that, or there's more. I think you said that
Yeah.
at the beginning. You knew that there was more for you. So
Mhm.
not only was going to Ghana an opportunity for you to reconnect with family, but I wonder if there's some part of you that just sensed that you would have a different sort of belonging there.
Yeah. I love that you brought that up, and it's funny because is it this year actually? I haven't been diagnosed, but I found out that I have ADHD.
Mm.
And when I read all the things about it and connect with people that I now find out they have it too, and I'm like, oh, that's how we connected. I realized that my sense of discontentment with what is is probably comes from that. I've always felt that way, that there must be more.
Mm.
And the just fitting into the system, working, going to school, blah, blah, it just wasn't for me. And even starting a business while in college was probably another part of me rebelling and saying, I just don't want to finish school and just go and work a 9 to 5. I need to do something else. And so by the time I graduated, I found a job already, but I also had my business, which I had already started 2 years prior to graduating. And I think the common thing in my life is that people always say, "Oh my God, how do you get all that done?" And I think I can't just stick to one thing. I have to always be busy. I have to always explore what's out there for me. And I push my limits. I'm like, life is too short to just be doing the same thing, and you need to find out what's more for you, but also what's more out there. Life is so beautiful. There's so many people, there's so many things to do and see. So we should all taste it. And I guess I always tell myself, if I were to die tomorrow, today, I want to be able to say, you know what, I tried. I really tried to live the most out of this world, and I'm grateful for the time that I was given.
Yeah. Yeah, it's almost like you're just soaking up every drop you can.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so beautiful. How has all of that led to, the creation of your she tribe and tell me more about that part of your journey.
Yeah. So when I was in Ghana, I learned a lot about community, and also how you can build your own intentional tribe where, like create new friendships as an adult. That was a new thing to me because, again, most people are friends with people they grew up with, went to school with, or colleagues. That's kind of where and how we meet people and make friends, right? At least in the West, and I guess everywhere. But being an adult and living in a place that I didn't call home forced me to make new friends, and so I had to be intentional. And because I could pick my friends, they just didn't happen to be the people that are my neighbors or went to school with me or work with. So I actually got to think about what are the characteristics of people that I want to hang out with. What are some of the things that I need, and what is it that I can give back? What kind of person, what kind of friend do I want to be? And by thinking about that, I made a few bad choices because it's just like riding a bike, right? It was new. I probably didn't remember how it was back when I was younger making friends. But again, it happened more naturally in a way. I didn't have to think so much about it. Whereas now as an adult, I really had to think more about it. And I was so lucky to make a very, very good friend. And then I realized how as humans you can handpick your tribe. And so when I moved back to just before I moved back to Belgium, I created a Facebook group of like-minded women. And I just thought, I wonder if there are more women out there like me who are out of the box, who are unconventional, who are okay being, they're almost like looking to be unconventional. They don't fit the mold, and they just care about personal growth, and they want to try out new things and want to thrive really. And I was like, you know what, I wonder if there are more women like that out there. So I connected with a few friends and just decided to create a Facebook group, which grew to over 600 people in the meantime.
Oh, wow.
And so that first started as a Facebook group. And then when I moved to Belgium, as I became a new mom, I joined motherhood communities. And one in particular was hosted by two women, two midwives. Every week, we would come together, bring our sandwiches, and we would have a circle and talk about our babies and how we felt. And those sessions were so liberating because all mothers were exhausted and
Yeah.
had so many things to talk about. And it was great because you realize you weren't alone and you weren't a bad mom for, you know, sometimes being resentful and thinking, oh my God, my life has changed so much. And for me, a lot had changed. I had, moved to Ghana as a single woman, moved back to Belgium, married now with a child. So a lot has changed also in my identity now. And I just wanted to connect more with like-minded women face to face and do things with them. So when I joined this motherhood group, it was amazing, but our lifestyle were different workshop. And so I started to do more events, and then COVID hit and we took everything online.
Mm.
Once we took everything online, I realized that the women who were joining just wanted more support, were staying longer on the calls. And so that's when I decided that I wanted to deepen myself in this and took a course to learn how to put together a coaching framework, how I could guide these women better. Because I saw that there was a need, but I thought, okay, I've always been the person that people come to when they want advice, and I always said I give great tips, but I wanted to make sure I knew what I was doing. And so I learned how to put my process into like a framework. And that's what I did. And in August 2020, sorry, is when I had my first group coaching, and
Mm.
it was a major success. And so from there on, we just kept going.
What an incredible story. And it sounds almost like, so what started the She Tribe as a Facebook group in those early days was you were looking for community
Yeah.
and wondering, okay, surely there's got to be other people out there like me. And so there you were really sussing out your identity and what was important to you in other people. And trying to build a community around that. And it was so successful because it sounds like you found lots of people that were like you and like-minded in ways that you guys really resonated with each other. But then to go even further and dive into the coaching aspect of it and bring in a framework to support these ladies, it's almost like you were showing up for some version of yourself, maybe a version where of who you had been just a few months or a few years prior.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Totally.
That's incredible. So because you had already walked it, you knew these ladies inside and out to some
Yeah.
degree.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, completely.
How has that, I mean, so you're 4 years or over 4 years in now. It's into your she tribe. How has that impacted your identity ongoing?
Yeah, I think I have kept growing and knowing that um, there are seasons in life, and that sometimes you may start something, but it doesn't mean that you have to kind of stick through it till the end. I think another aspect why, another reason why a lot of people are afraid of entrepreneurship or just starting anything new is that I think I mentioned it in the beginning somewhere. Is that
Mm.
people feel like they have to be married to something. Like if I do something, I cannot stop, I cannot turn back, or I cannot change. But the thing is, that's just weird because there's nothing in life that is the same. Actually, the only, what was it? There's a quote, the only constant thing in life is change.
Yeah.
And so I think that's one big lesson for me as I create this community, as I'm doing my work as a coach, is embracing, but also accepting that there will always be change. And change means sometimes that you start something and after a moment it's for a season and that you move on to a next chapter. But that doesn't mean that it's a failure or that it didn't work or whatnot. And so being able to um, accept, but also openly share with my community when it's time to move on to something else has
Mhm.
definitely been a big lesson. And I think it's a lot easier for me now to share those next chapters with my own community. Whereas before, I almost felt like, oh my God, if I share something about me moving into not necessarily a new direction, but just a new chapter, it almost felt as if I'm saying that what I was doing up until that point wasn't good enough.
Mhm. Yeah, it's almost, it reminds me of you've talked about releasing past identities that no longer serve you. And
Yeah.
it's almost like you're talking about this transition where you're
Mhm.
leaving behind those identities that no longer serve you, part of which, in this instance, might be the expectation that you're supposed to commit to something and never change. And
Mhm.
that if you do change, it's because they're you're admitting failure in some way
Yeah.
and devaluing the place where you were. And now you're transitioning, or maybe you have transitioned into a space where you're seeing it, like the analogy you used earlier about learning how to ride a bike. Sometimes you fall and skin your knees, but also sometimes it's that, but sometimes it's just that's the season. That's what we've been experiencing. Where we have been is simply a reflection of where we are in our journey. And
Mhm.
now we have learned what we need to learn. We've soaked up all it has to offer, and we're growing forward into the next stages.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think many times I catch myself almost trying to do things, basically forgetting my lesson of Ghana, of the Ghanaian entrepreneurs, the women who were okay trying something new. And if it didn't work, or if even if it worked, moving on to a next thing and not associating anything to it. There's no guilt. There's also no, it's just it is what it is.
Mm.
And I find myself every time I want to change something thinking it has to be this very complex process I have to go through, that I almost have to explain myself to so many people, where I could just say, well, this is my business or this is my journey and this is what I'm doing right now. And I get to turn the page and move on without a complicating process. And just to give maybe an example for in business, for instance, when we look at launching something, or maybe we have a brand that we are changing. A lot of people feel like, well, if I'm changing the brand, then it means that my previous brand wasn't good enough. And maybe it is, or maybe it was just a brand that did its work for the phase of the business you were in at that time. And now that you've evolved, you need something that represents you more accurately.
Right.
And a lot of people feel sometimes that now that I'm building this new brand or I'm working on it, maybe I should do like a big launch or something. Like I should do almost like a coming out and shout it out of the rooftop. But recently I saw someone doing a relaunch of something and they just did it. There was no announcement, there was nothing. And I was looking and I was thinking, that's amazing. Not that one is better than the other, but I looked into myself and realized that I have been holding on to the idea of moving on, like maybe changing a brand or something, because I didn't want to have to explain it to people. I didn't want to have to do a launch. And then I looked at this person and I thought, well, I don't have to do a launch about it. I could also just change it and just move on with my life. And so I'm saying that to say how much of the things that hold us back is just in our heads. And most people don't really care what it is that we're doing.
Gosh, it reminds me, or it just makes me think of going through school. So you finish one grade and then you move on to the next grade. But it's almost how how weird would it be if we beat ourselves up? Oh, I'm moving on the third grade. That must mean I was wrong as a second grader.
Yeah.
So it's this whole reframe that you just offered that it just is what it is. It doesn't have to be anything. It doesn't have to mean anything. It's
Yeah.
you and your journey. And it's also about how do you want to put it out there? Do you want the big launch and you want
Mm-hmm.
to celebrate going into third grade or whatever? Or does that not feel authentic, and you just want to pivot and move forward and you don't owe anyone any explanations?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, I love that. And also knowing that there's no right or wrong, but there's really the word you mentioned, authenticity here. What feels good to you? And I
Hmm.
think for me, that's very important in the coaching that I also do with my clients, is really about redefining success on your own terms. Like, and it's a constant journey, because even though you may believe that, okay, yeah, I create success on my own terms, blah, blah, blah. It is, we live in a world where there's constant comparison. There's social media, you see how others are doing things. And so you're always questioning whether you're doing it right. And so it's in every day, it's in the little things that we have to kind of pause again and say, okay, but does it feel good to me? Why do I want to do this? Why do I feel the need to do this? Is it because I think I have to? Or am I, letting it mean something if I do or if I don't? And by asking ourselves those questions enough, we're able to build really successful businesses on our own terms.
Exactly. I love that. On your own terms. It's your life. You get to choose how to live it.
Yeah, and we forget about that.
Yes, we do. Okay. So you have a gift for our audience. Is that right?
Yes, I
Tell
do.
us about it.
Yeah, in the line of this conversation is really great. One thing I love more than, anything, or something I like to do when I'm actually supposed to work, is personality tests. You could get me to take a personality test anytime because I
Yes.
just love it. And so as I am doing this work, I kept thinking about what is it that I can give my audience to help them know themselves even more. Because what a personality test does is helps you to dig deep into yourself and really understand why you do certain things. And when you understand why you do certain things, you can better align your next step to it. And so I created a quiz that is going to help people to really identify their superpower, the unique strengths, because in the world of entrepreneurship, it is so easy to blend in. Even when we don't want to, we kind of try to blend in by looking at what others are doing, by comparing ourselves. And so I created this quiz that I'm sharing with your audience today to help them identify their unique entrepreneurial superpower, really, because when you act out of your superpower, you can really create a thriving business on your own terms. So that is what I'm sharing with you all today.
Oh, that's so exciting. I really focus into the word superpower as something of a buzzword for me and something I really uh, encourage people to learn what their superpowers are. And we all have them,
Mhm.
and it can really help empower them in so many ways. I wonder, what have you seen? How have you been supported by knowing your superpowers?
Yeah, I think the biggest way is to once you know it is to act on it. So it's like your values, right? When I start working with my clients, one of the main things that I work on with them in the beginning is identifying their core values, because it's one thing having them, but it's one thing acting on them and really applying them in your life and in your business. And I think once you know what your superpower is, you can really go out in the world and embody it and use it, and let it be your banner to and your use it as a tool to basically what is the word I'm looking for, to live your best life and also to create a successful business. It allows you to be in alignment, really. And when you're not using your superpower, it's a lot easier to get burnt out. It's a lot easier to be overwhelmed. It's a lot easier to just feel like you're not good enough because you're always comparing yourself and you don't even know what you're doing anymore.
Right. Exactly. So knowing your superpower is one thing, but then when you're living it, it's really helping you create that life on your own terms that you mentioned.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's incredible. Rosemary, how can listeners find you to connect with you?
Yes. You can find me on Instagram, just my name, Rosemary Dede. So I'm not active a lot there anymore, but I am always in the DMs or in the story. You can find me, and just via on my website. So my website is www.rosemarydede.com. I also have my own podcast called Thriving on Purpose, which I am in the process of rebranding. But if you type that, you will find me where I share tips and strategies to help you live a successful life on your own terms.
Rosemary, thank you so much for being here with us and engaging with me in this fascinating conversation. It's been so wonderful to get to know you. And before we wrap up, I wonder if you have any just final thoughts for our listeners.
Yeah, my final thought is you are not too late. You are doing just great. And, you have the power to define and redefine success on your own terms. So, you know, do look within and listen to your own feelings and do what works for you. So that's what I would say. And thank you so much for having me. It was a wonderful conversation.
Oh, it's been my pleasure and joy. Thank you so much, Rosemary. Thank you for joining me on today's episode of Becoming and Belonging. I'd love to hear from you. What was your biggest takeaway from today's episode? Share your thoughts, reflections, any questions that came up. You can connect on social media or leave a comment wherever you're tuning in to keep the conversation going. If you found this episode meaningful, subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who might benefit from it. Until next time, keep growing, keep healing, and remember, you belong here.